Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I have an absolute peach of an episode for you today. I don't use fruit analogies too much, but I think this one deserves it. I'm joined by Coach Tim Riley. I first met Tim, I think about 3 years ago. He was dealing with some kind of nasty knee pain, patellar tendinopathy at the time, like me, and I helped him rehab that online, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And it's been cool to watch his development as a coach, because he's gone from someone who was kind of unhappy in his job to now training professional athletes on a daily basis and doing a phenomenal job with them. So that's really cool. And that's kind of what we spoke about today: training professional athletes, knee pain, knee rehab, exercise selection, how you coach these exercises, what our, not just him, but we kind of had a to and fro, what our favorite exercises, the movement patterns that you should be training, and how you structure knee rehab, and how you pick the right exercises and how you coach them well. So tons and tons and tons of practical information in there. If you're not even interested in knees, this goes for just movement in general, understanding movement and seeing how people are loading. I think this is honestly a must. Tim also agreed to do a short presentation for our members site. So we're trying to keep all our presentations and my videos that I deliver to people nice and short, like 10 to 15 minutes or 5 to 15 minutes. We're delivering a couple of videos a week to our members there. And basically at the end of the year, if you've watched every single one of my videos that I've sent to you every single week, to at least 2 videos a week, you're going to be pretty smart, and you won't have wasted time trying to find the right books to read and watch big long presentations and listen to podcasts and not sure about the information you're even getting. So we're trying to keep it short and sharp. And Tim has agreed to do a practical version of basically the podcast. So just a 10-minute video, really just showing the exercises that he's talking about here, how he likes to coach him and what can go wrong. So if you're interested in that, jump over to the members site and watch that. But either way, you're going to love the podcast. Please give Tim a follow, give it a share. That will help the podcast. That's your entry fee is just give us a like and a follow. And I hope you enjoy the episode. My brother was taking the lawnmower out of the shed. Bad start.
Do you have a bad start? Is he your older or younger brother?
Older. Yeah, he's I'm 31. He must be 35 now. So yeah, my brother was always a better athlete than me, always a bit smarter than me. People liked him a bit more than me, and he was a bit shit. So yeah, I've followed my brother's footsteps in a lot of ways. I didn't maybe realize I was doing it, but I was doing it. Like we went to the same school. We played football, Gaelic football and hurling for the same club, which wouldn't be uncommon, except that the club that we played for wasn't their local club.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so which you're not supposed to do. It's a bit taboo, but we did it anyway. We both went and did business in college. We both did marketing. We both went and worked for the same company. Like, he did all of these things before me, and I just kind of followed in his footsteps. And now, so we both were in like sales and marketing jobs and stuff like that. And then he left. He set up a gymnastics gym with his friend, and obviously I ended up in this job. So we have very similar career paths. He just did everything a bit better. Yeah, and he was a better athlete, and I just kept getting injured, and he didn't.
So it's literally, it feels like a clone, just 4 years behind.
A shitter version.
A less attractive, less liked. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you're doing pretty well yourself, David. So I'd imagine he must be doing pretty well.
Yeah, he's done pretty well. You're doing pretty well. I looked at your Instagram bio.
Yes.
It now says I train pros.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to claim this and own it, because that's the space that I wanted to work in. You know, it's kind of where I had been growing towards, and everything that I'd been doing, you know, prior to this point was to get to that place. So, and then something that started happening as I started to have more pro athletes come across my feed, is more pro athletes started reaching out to me. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to put, like, I felt like a douche typing it in.
Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I don't care. Like, I need people to know, like, this is what I do. This is the space that I'm trying to operate in, at least at this point in my career. And when you go to my page, like, this is what you're going to get.
Yeah. I fucking love it. I absolutely, I love what you're doing, because when we, just for obviously people who are listening, but when we first connected, I just helped you a bit with your knee and stuff, but then we were kind of chatting about your business and your career and different things like that. And you were definitely felt a bit stuck, probably is the word at the time, and a little bit maybe confused as to where you were going with things.
Yeah. And, so like my journey, especially with like, and I remember we got things cleaned up with my knee. And then I remember I reached out to you and I was like, hey man, like, I want to hear from your mouth, like, what are the steps you took to get to where you're at? And you were gracious enough to meet with me several times and give me some pointers, and because I was stuck. And I think it was multiple things. One, I knew what I wanted to do, but I don't think that I had quite gotten to the place where I was willing to do the work to get there. And the fact of the matter is having a strong social media presence, being active on Instagram, and in that space, it matters, and it makes a huge difference. And from the time we had that conversation, fast forward a year later, my following went from like 1,500 to 7,000. But one of the reasons I was able to put myself in a position to be working with pro athletes now was because of the content I was putting out. It gave me, and there could be debate on whether or not what you post on IG actually makes you credible or not, but in the eyes of the people who were willing to put trust in me and hire me, certainly that played a role.
Yeah. It helps you get in the door, and then you kind of prove your credibility, like by actually training these people and getting results with them, and they tell their friends, and then it compounds, it grows and grows and grows, So like getting a pro athlete doing a shit job and them not training with you anymore, them getting injured, isn't going to work. It doesn't matter what you say on Instagram,
That's right.
No, actually, maybe not. Even there is some people that are doing that and they just kind of make it look right, but
well, I don't even know if they make it look right. Some of the stuff I see going around, but to your point, I think with any population, once you, and word of mouth is such a big player in all of this. Once I got one pro guy, he got results. I already have other pro guys now, especially here in the off season for the NFL, that are reaching out to me and are coming to visit the facility. And so, like when I finally got the opportunity to work in that space and someone was trusting me with, keeping them healthy and helping them improve performance, there was this moment where I was like, oh man, Tim, don't screw this up. Right. But I knew that I'd done the work to put myself in a position to be there. So that quickly went away. And once I got into training, it was just the rest was history. Yeah, man.
What? So it says NFL, MLB, PLL. What's PLL?
Look, that's pro lacrosse.
Ah.
Do you guys have lacrosse over there?
Nah, we have hurling. Is much better.
Okay.
Significantly better. But I've never, one athlete I've never worked with is a lacrosse athlete. Well, there's obviously a few athletes I've never worked with, but definitely not lacrosse.
It's a field sport, right? So like now it's from like an endurance level, it's somewhere in between like NFL and like a soccer game. So like these, and then there's also like a lot of standing around too, So for me, it was like, I've never played lacrosse, so for me, like those first few sessions were a lot of listening, like what's been your experience? What are the things that have helped you? Where do you feel like you can improve? Which may all sound like common sense, but I really tried to be intentional about getting to understand the sport through the mouth of the athlete instead of me just like, pulling up a video on YouTube or whatever the case may be. And it's going well. So I'm excited about it. And we're starting to get to a place now where we're creating camps, and we're going to start having high school kids coming through, and it's a good time.
Nice. How important do you think it is to understand the sport itself of the athlete that you're working with?
I think that it's important that the athlete understands that you're making an effort to understand the demands of the sport. And I also think it's important to be familiar as much as you can, because, my mind goes to like this concept of like sport specific training. And I think as far as energy systems go, like that makes a lot of sense to me. But there are so many things that, just developing strength, developing power, that's where I'm going to stay in my lane in the weight room and what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm going to take a look at the things that I feel like are going to be limiting factors for them and bring them up. But I try and stay out of, like, I'm not going to have him doing a single leg squat holding a lacrosse stick. You know what I'm saying? There are just things that I feel like transfer and don't. And so once I have a general understanding of the demands of the sport, the training, it's not going to shift too much, at least for field sport athletes.
Yeah. I have, I'm working with Kate. You might have seen a couple of posts of her. She's a race walker at the moment. And it definitely helped me understand her body and stuff when she was kind of showing me pictures of her walking, her form, and funny positions that their bodies get into. Like they pretty much have to have, I don't know how much, but like their knee has to be pretty much straight all the time when there's one foot on the floor. I think it looks like they might get disqualified or whatever if they have a bent knee. So they have to have a straight knee. And like that helps me understand her assessment so much, because there's so much extension, like adduction, internal rotation in her body, and a lack of the exact opposite things like abduction, external rotation, flexion. The more we can get her into them positions. So I'm trying to be as unspecific as possible, the most unspecific I can. Now, that is a very specific sport. You know what I mean? It's just walking in a straight line, and they have to have a certain form and stuff like that. It's very hard on the body, incredibly hard on the body. So that I feel like it wouldn't matter too much if a basketball player came to me, or like NFL, even though I've never played NFL or stuff. I've worked with some of these people. I did it because I played field sports myself all my life and worked with field sports people. Like I feel like I got that. But then some specific sports, I think it's important to know, so you might be able to give them the opposite stimulus, not so you go specific to the sport itself, I think.
Yep.
You know what I say to people all the time, where they're like, they have an Instagram, say it's 500 followers, 1,000 followers, and it's been a bit shit. Like some of the posts are a bit shitty. They're not specific on anything. And I think I said this to you as well, was within 3 months, you could have completely overhauled it, rebranded it, because someone will only scroll back the last 15 posts. So in 15 days, you could go from this shitty looking trainer who's like, in terms of no Instagram stuff, like why would I train with that guy, to like these brilliant videos or these brilliant pictures, really specific to the population you want to work with. Someone comes on your page, they're not going to keep scrolling and scroll. 90% of people won't. Like you can kind of overhaul your brand and stuff, but you actually have to take that jump and say, like, you have to get past that imposter syndrome and that comfort level and actually just fucking do it. And I think you probably got to a point where you just said, I'm just going to actually do this now.
Well, and I was watching other people who, I see you being one of them. I remember the first time I heard you speak, it was on Just Fly Sports Performance Podcast. This has got to be 3 years ago
3 years
now,
ago.
David.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I followed you, and I think you had like 2,500 followers or something like that. And then I started working with you closely after that. And I just watched this meteoric rise. And really it was.
Joel helped with that. Joel's podcast helped with that so much.
I mean, dude, you went and that's just a perfect example of someone who's qualified, right? Like, you have the knowledge, you've got the goods, you can really impact people and make a difference. But you were putting yourself in positions to be successful. So when that opportunity, showed up, boom, you hit the ground running. And when I saw that happen with you and having a real personal, because, it all seemed out there.
Yeah.
Like, I see these people getting successful and growing there. And one, I didn't understand the potential financial implications, of what having a healthy, involved following can do for you as a coach. The kind of influence and impact that you can have on people. It didn't register because I didn't know anyone personally who had been able to experience that.
Yeah.
And watching you go from 2,500 followers to however many you have now, and all the success you've had with your basics programs, it was the light bulb was switched. I was like, I know what I have to offer. I'm the only one keeping me from having the level of success and impact in this industry that I want to have.
Yeah, because it's hard. It is hard to get to see other people's journey along the way. And then you look at someone who's up here and it's like, oh, well, they're just, in your mind, it's like they're just special, or they're just, they did something that I couldn't do. But when you're kind of close to someone and you see a bit of their journey along the way, it's like, that's a normal person. That's no more charismatic. No, there's no special quality here that's leading to this. It's just consistency and a bit of pair of balls sometimes, and good knowledge, so that's what's important. That's what they talk about in Silicon Valley all the time. People move to Silicon Valley. It's not that this is some special place or whatever. They just move there, and they're starting to be surrounded by all these other tech people who have big ideas, and they're like, no one wants to. Everyone's just listening to each other, being influenced by each other, and you're just dragged along for the ride. That's why your network is so important, to actually have, not just look at people, but actually connect with people. For me, like, paying someone, whoever it is, for a call or a chat or something like that, is if you're serious about actually growing, like finding someone who you think is doing something that you would like to do, like you did with me. Now that was more to do with like your knee at the time, obviously, but that experience, in my opinion, and putting yourself in those situations, going to workshops, people won't pay for a workshop or a course. It's like, you might learn one thing here that will completely skyrocket your results with this type of population, or you might just meet one person who completely changes or influences you, or gives you the motivation or whatever it is to go on. So like, you have to put yourself in situations, and then it's just about following through from there.
Yeah. And I think, a reoccurring theme in my life and in my career has been, I have to be willing to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and doing the things that, and having fear of uncertainty, like walking through that stuff. And I think, perseverance and having consistency are like the crux of that, right? Because there's been so many times where I'm walking through a phase where I'm trying to get my Instagram off the ground. I'm going through the job transition process, going from working at this corporate setting to, this high level pro athlete setting. Like, being willing to walk through the uncertainty, I think, is really what separates people. And what you said about Silicon Valley is, now I'm in this space where I am around, these high level athletes and all these coaches that coach these high level athletes. And I'm beginning to see, these people that I used to look at and say, like, man, that guy, he's got the secret sauce. Like, he's doing something. And I'm getting out there training with him. And now there'll be moments where I'm like, why the fuck is he doing that? It's like, there's been this shift where I've gotten into this space. I see the degrees of separation are, or at least the way that I had them in my mind, are not there. And really the only limiting factor, and and that goes for the business world as well. I train a client who was VP for HashiCorp, and they just went public. And I get an opportunity to pick his brain, and he's clearly a brilliant dude. And sometimes he'll be talking, he's just running circles around me. But I recognize now, being around these high performing people and high performing athletes, that they just took the chance. They just did the work. And a lot of people just aren't willing to take the chance and aren't willing to do the work, or the first time they're met with failure, that's it.
What surprised you with, let's say, any of the athletes, but maybe an NFL athlete or whatever? What were you like as good at them at that surprised you?
So I think that just because these guys are big and they're strong and they're fast, like, you assume that they're going to have some competency with some movement patterns, and that's just not the case. Like, these guys, in a lot of cases, and I'll speak specifically with the NFL guys, are in the league in spite of whoever their strength coach was. I mean, or not even in spite. And these guys would have made it there without that guy. Like, it's very clear to me. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be able to make an impact. But these guys are here not because of anybody or any input, one coach or any, like, these guys are here because they are NFL athletes, I can lift more than some of the guys. I can be a little quicker, believe it or not, than some of these guys. I can jump higher than some of these guys. And it means dog shit, because what they're able to do when they step on that football field is what makes them special. Now, here's the cool thing. And it's funny because there's so many parallels, and this might ruffle some feathers, but it's the truth. There are so many parallels with what I see the biggest areas of opportunity for Gen Pop clients as for pro athletes. And people don't like to hear that, because, especially people who train pro athletes, because it feels like you're reducing your role or something. But it is the truth. There are so many constants that I see between the two. The biggest one being is, where can this guy, what does the focus of his training need to be? What's going to help him the most right now? And then you just get out of their way for the most part.
I have two things to say. One, that you see the video of LeBron squatting.
Yes, exactly.
That, in my opinion, that strength coach that works with him has probably kept LeBron fit or whatever, healthy for longer by not fucking him up doing stupid things. And that squat, like, it's not doing good things, but it's not even a squat. And
no, it's not.
I think
the stimulus isn't intense enough to make much change at all, good or
negative
bad.
or positive. So, like, half the time, I think this sport specific stuff that the best athletes are doing, it's not any it's not like negative or positive. They're just getting a little bit of a moving around, and strength coaches won't like this either. But, like, it's not all strength coaches, but the vast majority of stuff that you see in the strength and conditioning is dog shit, and people are moving like crap, like, and feeling crap, and athletes just feel jacked up all the time. Just don't do that, and some of these athletes are going to be so successful.
Well, so I'm gonna humble brag here, but, like, I took an athlete and he was unsigned at the beginning of the season, and I took over his training just individually. Like, I'm in charge of this guy now. And, I simplified things. I got rid of anything, all the nonsense. So there's no bells and whistles here. We're sprinting, we're jumping, we're lifting. When we're lifting, I'm redirecting him as little as possible to put him in positions to train the qualities that I want to train. And by the time he got picked up, the best 40 time, the best broad jump that he had ever had was at his pro day, right? So at the draft, actually. Well, he matched both of those when he went and tried out. And this, his draft was 6 years ago. So, why did that happen? And I spent plenty of time thinking about this. I'm like, okay, it's not because my training is so fucking special that this happened. I think it's more of, I was able to remove a lot of the nonsense, focus on the things and only the things. And this is of course subjective still, but focus on only the things that I know he's going to be asked to do and what things are going to help him do that and nothing else. And again, I mostly got out of his way. If he was doing something egregious, we're not going to allow that to happen, right? Because I, do no harm. Like, I'm here to keep him healthy and on the field first. And then also close second to that, what can I do to get him stronger and faster, right?
Yeah. The second thing, the parallel, actually, that must have felt better than sending emails in lifetime, was it?
Much better. Yeah. He came back from Green Bay and he was like, hey man, you're not going to believe this. And I was like, what's up? And he told me, he was like, yeah, I matched my fastest 40 time and I matched my best broad jump and my best vert jump. And the validation, that you get from hearing that, because it is why I do it. And I saw the look on his face. I saw how happy he was, man. And I knew that I had done what I needed to do to put him in a position to make a team. He didn't have a job, man. Mm-hmm. Like that's what that in-season training is all about. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot better than, having to field a phone call about a pissed off customer because one of my trainers was 5 minutes late to a session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now you'll always, like, if you were watching him playing or whatever, you'll always have that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now look, things can go up and down and stuff like that, but you'll have a little bit you'll be bought into him and you'll be able to watch it and stuff. And you're not the S&C coach who's like, I'm responsible for this thing or anything like that. But at the same time, you have this like little bit of internal, like, you're proud of what you did, like,
I had an opportunity to play a part, a small part in putting him in a position to be successful. And like, I was just, essentially, the way I like to look at it is, I'm able to lay this toolkit at the feet of this athlete. It's up to them whether they pick it up or use it, and whether they do or don't, it's got nothing to do with me. But it's a special thing.
Cool, man. What are the parallels that you said between like Gen Pop and those athletes then that you think need to be trained?
Yeah, so movement strategies, for sure. It's funny, especially I have yet to work with an NFL guy who can't benefit from getting into a stacked position and getting a more knee dominant squat. Not one, not yet.
I've never met a person ever.
Right, exactly. And that was my next point. Like, it's just those two. That's the first one. That's the big one where it's like, I'll have a guy where I'm trying to get an idea of where his strength's at. What movement strategy is he using to operate? And anytime I get them into a squat position, and that's why if you go to my Instagram and you look, almost all of my videos have some sort of heel elevation, and I'm using a safety bar or something that's going to bias them to allow for those positions to hit the positions I want to train, the muscles that I feel like need to be trained. And that's the first big one. And then also too, just general movement competency. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I can ask a guy to do a lateral lunge. I'm going to show you what a lateral lunge looks like. This is what I think it looks like. And then what happens next? I'm like, dude, I know you just watched me do this. That's not what I did. You know what I mean? And just giving them, like, and now here's the culture, right? Because like a lot of, and again, like, you know, they're where they're at, you know, because of the God-given talent and ability that they have, right? But I think in football, and it's like this in other field sports as well, where it's like you've got, you know, 60 or 40 guys on a workout floor. You know, the culture is just like, hey, are they getting the work in? And like that technical piece isn't quite as important. And in fairness, like, I mean, they made it to the league, right? But when I have an opportunity to work with them in that smaller, more intimate setting, I can just put them in positions to maybe slow things down a little bit and get into positions that we're actually trying to get into. And it's not as inherent as one might believe.
Yeah. I think for most coaches, like if you're really good at understanding the squat pattern, actually understanding what a squat is, like it's a vertical displacement of your mass up and down. So now I need to set them up in the right way to help people do that. A squat shouldn't look, not shouldn't, but like there's nothing wrong with training a hingy looking squat. It's just not a squat really anymore, right? So like that's what a squat should look like. When you're doing a lateral movement or something, you just get very clear on, one thing to get clear on, for me at least, and I try and help people get clear on, is like the foot pressure type of stuff without going into crazy amount of detail. But like, is the heel on the floor, where are they pushing from, that type of thing, that cleans up so much stuff. And that's why the slant board is helpful. And if you just start to like understand movement by movement, what I know everyone, self-organization is a big thing, like everyone will do things different way, but there is like a textbook example in your own mind of what that could look like.
Yes.
You just work towards that. And it doesn't matter what type of athlete you're working with. Like if you can nail those things, I think you'll start to see improvements in mobility, strength, and transferability in terms of how they actually go and jump and run. I genuinely think those movements will make a difference in that. I really, really do. I really feel strongly about that.
Well, I agree 100% because I've seen it. Like I've seen it and I've seen it happen pretty quickly. And you know, one of the movements that I really love to put them in a position to be able to really bias the quad, make it a knee dominant movement, get vertical displacement, is a safety bar single leg squat, and usually initially with sort of a Hatfield situation, right? So they can really manage where their body is in space and focus on going straight up and straight down. And one of the easiest cues, and this has been the best cue that I kind of started telling myself long before I started hammering this stuff home, first with Gen Pop and now, you know, with the pro guys, is, you know, push the knee forward to go up. And what that has done that I've seen is, instead of me coaching, okay, I want you trying to push to the midfoot and then explaining what a midfoot is and where it is and where you should feel that, or, you know, or anything like that, by that happening, by them pushing their knee forward as they go to reverse the weight back up into the concentric portion of the movement, because of that intention, the weight automatically shifts into the midfoot, and then the knee sticks and the hip is able to come up and over the top. And, you know, for some people, that's it. That's all they need. And then, you know, then let the self-organization, then I can step out of the way, right? And if they don't get it there, the next thing is like, I'll just put my hand in front of the knee and I'll say, your knee can't leave my hand. So once they descend into that bottom portion of the movement, the knee will push forward. And once the knee meets my hand, as they come back up, the goal is for them to try and keep their knee to my hand as long as possible. And 2 reps of that, and they've got it.
Yeah, it's unreal. So good. And it's not that you want more knee flexion as they come up, it's just that you don't want knee extension as early. So you just want a bit of hip extension before the knee extension.
Yeah. And I, you know, it's not like I'm holding it right like the entire time until like just as that hip is coming up and over the top, keep that knee stuck here in place. And then I remove that. And every single time. And then you can ask just questions again that are common sense to me, where it's like, hey, where are you feeling that? You know, and a lot of times guys will be like, well, I'm not sure. So I'll have them push the knee forward, and it'll be a resounding real quick. Oh, I feel that in my quad.
The quad
right?
is lit the hell up.
It is lit, right? And they've never felt that before. It's like, I'll watch them do a set of squats their way, and like, they don't even have a quad pump, you know, it's all glutes and maybe a little bit of hams or just erectors, but
lower back.
right.
Yeah. But that's why the biomechanics is important to understand. And not just like with the training stimulus in general, your quads, but obviously you're someone who has had jumper's knee, patellar tendinopathy, and works with people in that. And people say it's not like biomechanics aren't important. They are important to help you get the stimulus into the tendon. And if you keep giving someone a squat and they keep using their back muscles and don't push their knee forward, biomechanics are definitely important because you ain't loading that tendon, not a chance.
So I'll go on a quick story about my own journey with that. And I see it showing up in the pro athletes too, because NFL players get jumper's knee too. They just don't know that that's what it's called. Right. I started to develop jumper's knee, and I started doing it because I started low bar back squatting, and I'm still playing basketball and I'm doing all this field stuff. But, you know, to your point, when I was coming up, my mentors and the people I learned from and at the time, what was considered, you know, the right thing to do for sport training was to not do any isolated movements, right? Because that's bodybuilding. And definitely, so, you know, no quad, no leg extension, no sissy squats, no nothing like that. And then also too, you got to lift with your hips. You got to have strong hips. If you have strong hips, you're going to be a powerful athlete, right? And you don't want to be quad dominant, you know, because ACLs, right? And so I started to develop this knee pain. I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta take the load off my quads. You know, I got to start doing less so that I can rest these knees up so that they can get better. And the problem, you can see where this is going, got way worse and rapidly. And I couldn't figure it out. Now, gratefully, things have changed and I've learned and I've grown since that time, right? And I no longer have knee pain. But I see that same sort of situation playing itself out every single day, especially when I get new guys coming in. I have someone I'm getting prepared for his pro day currently, and me and Daniel Bach are actually tag teaming it. I'm doing his strength work. He's doing all the speed and plyometric work.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. We're having a good time. But we had him come in and I had him work up to a heavy single on a deadlift, a heavy single on a squat, because I wanted to see under tension, you know, what is he leaning to? What strategies does he have? And, you know, he's 6'3", real strong hips. And even before I got him under the lifts, I was like, oh, I know how this is going to go, because I'm looking at his legs and he's got very little quad development, virtually none. I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen here. And sure enough, he goes to show me a squat, and it looked, you know, people talk about like a squat looking like a good morning. It was a good morning. I mean, like there was almost no knee bend until
vertical shin.
His spine was parallel to the floor, and as he descended, he only bent his knees because he absolutely had to at that point, right? I elevated his heels a significant amount, and we worked up to the heaviest weight he could, and he was shot, right? So low hanging fruit for him, right? Just not even from a tendon health perspective. He has no problems with his knees, but he's not jumping as high as he could. You know, he deadlifted 600 pounds. He couldn't even get a 1.5 times body weight squat, right? And the limiting factor is the quads. He's never trained a true squat pattern. Yeah.
I have so many things to say about that. There's about 16 podcasts like I do on what you just said. Like when I first worked with you, we just did like a bodyweight split squat. Your quad was destroyed.
Smoked.
Right? Smoked. You were in a ton of extension at the time, like back extension, tons. You're going to lose like range of motion to hips and stuff as a result. So what you said about the squat, the stacked, like teaching everyone to stack, you don't have to teach it that much if you can teach them how to actually flex their knees, right? Because they stay stacked. They don't end up in a good morning keeping a vertical shin. Secondly, if you teach someone to push their knee forward, they are going to have to pronate their foot a little bit, not like a big E version. So the knee goes forward. There's a little bit of pronation to get that push. So people try and help with people's knees and tight lower backs and hip mobility, and yet they tell them to squat by pushing their knees out, which limits dorsiflexion, limits pronation, limits knee flexion, limits load on the quad and the patellar tendon, and stops them being able to actually stack. Right? Thirdly, I'm a big fan of leg extension work for patellar tendon, as you are. It's so important, right? It's the easiest way to get load through the tendon. It's hard to fuck it up. But I'm still a biomechanics guy as well when it comes to the tendon, because I think if you're not teaching someone how to actually squat, bend their knees, like load this pattern, you're robbing people of 10 years of good training. And that's the danger, my danger with the leg extension, because your knees will feel amazing if you have patellar tendinopathy and you just commit to doing leg extension for 3 or 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, your knees will feel way better. And the danger is you just keep doing that. And then like on the side, I do all my shitty squats. Like you have to address how they actually move. And that frustrates me a lot of the time because the research doesn't support that. Like you just load the tendon, but I have to understand biomechanics of how I load the tendon, which means I have to be able to teach someone to bend their knees. Right. And they won't bend their knees. Like there is the counter argument to that is they're not bending their knees. They're not squatting in that way because the tendon is sore. I agree with that in some ways, but even after you've done loads of isos, the tendon starts to feel good. They will still squat in that way.
100%.
You know, so
100%.
That's my 3 of the 17 things.
So to piggyback off of that, like the way I've prioritized it and the way that I was able to have success, recovered from my knee pain. And then when I started taking knee pain, specifically jumpers, knee pain clients, if there's anything else, I'd send them to you, because again, I'm gonna stay in my lane. If I've got some experience that I know that might be helpful, great. If I can't, I've got this guy, David, he'll Zoom you. He's in Ireland. Getting them to understand what kind of movement is going to be required to put them in a position to, recover from this pain or improve performance. And, usually, and you talked about people who, it's like a chicken or the egg situation, right? Are they squatting this way because they have pain or because they have been utilizing this movement strategy? They are now experiencing pain because there's no load going through the tendon. And if they go to do anything that is more intense than that squat movement, walking downstairs, running down a hill, landing from a jump, they're getting this flare up, right? And I used to mull that over like this chicken or the egg scenario. And then what I found just through trial and error and training is like the chicken or the egg, what came first for me. It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't fucking matter. Here's what works. Like I need to get you moving body weight straight up and down, getting the knee to flex and extend appropriately. And then all that stuff that you talked about with like the leg extension stuff, that's all icing on the cake. Like that's like the fine tune work that I can come in on the back end and get a real direct stimulus. But first things first, globally, I want to get you capable of moving into those positions. Sometimes it requires doing the leg extensions first to help get you out of that little bit of pain just enough so that you feel safe moving into those squat positions. Because I have noticed too, where it's like, if someone is just feeling pain and over again in a certain position, even if they're hitting the right, and everyone's different, even if they are hitting good positions, it's actually not that helpful to them. No, because they're still associating it with it being a painful movement. And so that's the only scenario where I would say introducing a leg extension first for some people might be useful or helpful. And then, but it gets back to priority one. You got to get squatting and lunging in a way. It's just
it's how you get there. There's different ways of getting there, but you got to get there. No, I don't think enough people get there. What's your What are you doing on the leg extension? Have you found like a right amount at the moment, or what do you think?
So, and we don't even have a leg extension in my gym.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't have one
devastated.
either. I have like I have a few cool setups that we can use, but I don't have one.
So what I've been doing in lieu of the leg extension, now here's the other thing too. I'm not taking on as many in-person, jumpers knee clients per se. And most of them were gen pop. The NFL guys are like, yeah, my knee hurts, whatever. It's not, they don't go, they're like, yeah, I saw the PT and they gave me some stuff to do. And like, they just play through it, man. And so, but now when I get them, I'm like, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
But so what I've been doing to replace the leg extension has been a combination of that knee dominant lunge that I use with the safety squat bar or dumbbells or whatever, right? Just get in the right position. You're going to get what you're looking for. And then once they're able to get a handle on that, it's the sissy squat. So the knees over toes, sissy squat. And have you ever heard of Ben Patrick, or the knees over toes guy? He was just on Joe Rogan.
Yep.
I got asked that probably 10 times this past week.
Yep, me too. Yeah.
And
that sissy
also
squat was the thing that first, probably one of the first things that I realized. Probably a lot of things help my knees. Now, when you said like the NFL guys are like, oh, my knee hurts, I'm just going to get on with it. I did that for like 7 years until I could not get on with it. The analgesic effect was gone. I have a distinct memory of playing, trying to do a warm up, trying to do a half a session, probably 30 minutes of a session, playing Gaelic football with our county team. I could not fucking run. That was when I realized I am gone here.
Yeah.
Because for 7 years, I could warm up, my knee would feel okay.
Yep.
I would still be guarding it. I would still be running like shit, but like I could get through sessions. I could play. If it was more than 3 days a week, it started to get particularly nasty, like 3 hard training sessions on the field. It got pretty nasty, but that was gone. So I would say like a lot of those players will end up at that place depending on how hard they're pushing it. So, but just being okay enough is a bad place to be.
So I've got some cool stuff I think that you're going to find interesting. So when I have NFL players who present that, the cool thing is like, getting them enough, it doesn't take long for them to get to a place where like, yeah, my knee's not really bothering me that much anymore. But there is an interesting phenomenon that I first observed in myself and then in my gym clients and now in my NFL guys. Whatever side, there's usually a side that's more affected than the other, and even more than that. Let me back up. It's usually one leg. It's usually not both. It's usually one. And almost always that same side leg, the quad is more atrophied than the other side. And now here's what I think you're going to enjoy and maybe get to nerd out with me here. I'll get them on a foam roller bridge. And that same side leg, if I do the other leg first, the strong knee, the pain-free knee first, their first time getting on, maybe they can go 20 or 30 seconds, right? And if you haven't done a foam roller bridge correctly, and for your first time, if you lasted 30 seconds, my hat's off to you. I get them on the right leg. Let's say, for example, it's the right leg that has pain, and they won't last 10.
No.
Immediate cramps, either the calf or hamstring or both cramp up entirely. And I've always found that fascinating because, that was my experience as well. And that's also too why I do feel like, the easiest, lowest hanging fruit when it comes to tendon stuff is going to be a load tolerance thing, a strength thing. But running directly parallel to that, and here comes the chicken or the egg thing. Is this a co-contraction issue first? Where obviously this hamstring and calf aren't coordinating appropriately. They're not working together in a way that we need it to. And now it's creating a situation where we get knee pain and then the quad is beginning to atrophy and weaken. Or is it reverse? Is it something happened to the quad? Now I'm avoiding using this leg a certain way. that's interrupting my body's ability to co-contract appropriately. Either way, it doesn't matter really how we got there too much, because I've found that to undo that big mess of stuff that I just talked about, you have to do all of it.
Just do it
You
all.
have to do all of it.
Do it all.
You've got to, and I didn't want to let that go unsaid, where I'm just doing leg extensions or I'm just having them squat appropriately. Like, no, like on the back end of that, what's running parallel to that is a lot of the foam roller bridge stuff, where we're getting a co-contraction at the knee to help stabilize. And that runs side by side with everything that I do with the strengthening of the quad and the focus on the knee dominant squats.
It's just good movement. It's just training, like getting strong everywhere, and good movement. I think if you just did a foam roller bridge with someone who had jumper's knee, did it for 2 or 3 weeks, didn't do any quad load any more than they'd already be doing, the knee would still feel better.
Yes, I've done it.
Yeah.
I did it with you.
Yeah.
So when I first initially started working with you, I was so done with the quad stuff. And
your sound just went.
Okay, I'm back. I was so done with anything that I was doing. I only did your stuff, right? So I was only doing co-contraction work, and I don't know that we were doing any quad work initially.
Yeah,
I think it was
first
just
few sessions, probably not, because I take the easiest, lowest hanging fruit first and see what happens.
I think I was doing the slouch, and I was doing a foam roller bridge. In fact, I couldn't even do a foam roller bridge at first. You had me doing a bilateral reverse plank, because I couldn't even get through 5 seconds, right? But the first 2-3 weeks, my knee pain was better. And it didn't make any sense, because I was like, I'm supposed to just do isometrics for this knee and my quad, and that's what's supposed to work, right? And so it kind of took everything I thought I understood around what was happening and flipped it on its head. And then once I got to a place where I was able to demonstrate those movements with a little bit of literacy, and for longer than 20 seconds, you started introducing the quad stuff. And then I took it with the equipment. I think just naturally, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to take it the next step further. I'm going to get on that hack squat and make it very quad dominant. And that's going to be my main movement for the day. And I'm going to hammer these foam roller bridges for as long as I can. And sure enough, over time,
hack squat is so good.
It's so good.
Unbelievable. I would, if I could choose one piece of equipment to have, I need a cable machine, like a nice cable machine, like a Kaiser or something like that. I'd love one of them, but I'd probably choose a hack squat.
So I would too. And even more so, so I'm begging with ownership at my gym to get a hack squat in, because I have these big, tall, long-limbed athletes, and just being able to put them, and this gets me onto the machine thing, and you already know where I am with the machine. I love machines. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just gonna say it.
Machines are unbelievable.
I love them, and they get shit on, and it drives me crazy, because it's ultimately it is not the tool that makes or breaks you or gets you some magical results. There's all this stigma around certain movements, and it's a tool. How you use it dictates its function, right, and its effectiveness. And with a hack squat, if in my mind, right, and I guess this comes down to what your definition of what a squat should look like, right? But you and I have similar definitions. And when I think about what a hack squat offers, and your ability to ensure those positions are being hit safely, and then intent can go through the roof, stop it. Like, give me a better option. And
there's a nice reference for the back, like for staying stacked, all these things. So good. It's almost like a half bodybuilding. It's a half machine, half squat.
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
Which is basically, if you had to sum up my training in at least for me personally, like that, there could not be a better molding of the two. So yeah, I'm working on the hack squat angle, because being able to throw my NFL guys on that and not have to worry. And then if I'm doing a contrast or something, I'll go hack squat and then all the other stuff. Yep.
What the foam roller bridge, I'll go back to it for 1 sec. I think the quad issues came first, or the tendon issue came first. Then they don't actually get into that nice mid stance position when they run as much. They're almost trying to like use their leg as a poker then and push off back. Say I have right knee pain, which I did. Like it's like a poker and it's pushing me back over to the left side, and I'm not getting that distal hamstring, or it's probably not getting loaded as much. The gastrocs aren't getting loaded as much. The soleus isn't getting loaded as much. You're trying not to bend the knee as much. Now, obviously, if you're sprinting or whatever, you shouldn't be bending the knee a ton anyway. Like, but some bend. But anyone who's had like really bad jumper's knee, you'll try and keep that knee as straight as possible when you run or when you jump and stuff. So I think that's what probably affects the intermuscular coordination then, and the synergies and the co-activation there, I think probably. I do like Alex Natera's work as well, where he does like a knee iso push, where you get into that bent knee position and does an overcoming isometric pushing up into a bar. But that's more like once I've done a lot of the other stuff, I start to get in there and I think it can drive a lot of intent. Like there's just push as hard as possible through that foot. But it's not the low-hanging fruit, definitely. But I think it is another way to stress that coordination. How did the NFL guys get on with like foam roller bridge and stuff? Are they strong at it?
No. I've got some awesome videos of guys. It's become like this thing, I enjoy getting people on there for the first time, and I'm just like, I got this exercise, and we're gonna finish with this. We're going to finish with this isometric here at the end here today. And I demonstrate it and I just don't say a word. And I find that the biggest thing people avoid is actually getting the calf engaged, so it becomes more of just like this passive, I'm just hanging in there thing. But if you keep people honest and make sure that heel stays up and that the calf is really showing up to the party, the grimaces and the facial expressions that come next. And it's a humbling experience, right? Because like, I've got a guy who can deadlift 600 pounds, and then you get on that thing and it's incapable, cannot complete the exercise day one, right? But it's also cool to see how quickly they can start getting it. It's cool. Not like a Gen Pop client. A lot of the times where it takes session after session, it's 2-3 sessions in, and I think it's a lot of it is just the competitive nature, because most of the stuff I do, I'll have 2 guys side by side, right, doing this, and I'm not going to drop before him, and so they're able to channel that and use it in a positive way, and they'll get from 15 to 45 seconds over the course of a session too.
The key thing to understand what it is. At the ankle, it's more like an overcoming isometric to try and push down there. And the plantar flexion is like an overcoming isometric force, but then it's more yielding at the knee and the hip. So what they'll do instead is, instead of pushing down through the foot and the ankle hard and plantar flexing, they're trying to extend up through the back. So it's almost like they're trying to do like an overcoming type of movement at the lower back, and then there's no activity or whatever going on at the ankle. And it's the exact opposite we're trying to train. That's why I get frustrated. Not frustrated, but some people tag me in their foam roller bridges, and I'm like, I can't reshare that. Sometimes I do reshare it, because some people, you want to give some people a G up, but
sure.
Yeah.
So, I noticed that too, but a lot of the times the first strategy people will go to, it's almost like they're doing a single leg hip extension. And their foot just happens to be on a foam roller situation, and really, I'll say drop your hips, just barely get your butt off the ground, hardly at all, get the calf going, and now relax, stop straining your neck,
pecs,
and it's pretty fantastic what happens when you get them, if they can get to a place where they are relaxed in the face and in the neck. And it's almost like the intensity inherently goes up through the hamstring and through the calf so much more.
There was a research page, like a physio page, probably a month ago. I forgot about this until right now. They were talking about like doing a bridge with lifting your heel off the floor and doing like a glute bridge exercise, and they were trashing it, right? Trashing it like, oh, these evidence-based people, all the load, like you're just trying to make two exercises into one, like a calf raise, but doing a glute bridge and blah, 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 blah. And all the load goes onto the shoulders when you lift up the heel like that, and you lift up the hips. And it had like 200 comments of evidence-based physios laughing at this stuff. Now, it wasn't a foam roller bridge or whatever, and I was just like, I'd love to get every single one of you to do this exercise.
Do it. Yes, do the exercise.
Yeah, where you actually, the key is not to lift your hips up as high as possible. That's what they don't understand.
Yeah,
because the higher you lift the hips, the more the whole load goes on the shoulders, the more I use my back. Keep your hips fucking low, do it in the right position, and then tell me it's a shit exercise.
Right.
It's dumbos, like idiots wreck my head. Anyway, one other thing then that you kind of brought up earlier, knee dominant versus hip dominant.
Yeah.
So that athlete that you were saying about the squat, like the back squat, and it's very much a hinge. You're going to have to fight your corner here. I don't love classifying people like that.
You know, I've heard you discuss that before, where, and I think we had a conversation briefly on the lens I look at it, the terminology I use for what would be hip and knee dominant. I think you actually have it flip-flopped, where I say someone is hip dominant in the sense that when they are, let's use the squat for simplicity, right? They're loading into the heels, they're pushing the hips back, and then they're using that same strategy to come up and use the low back and hips to lift the weight back up. Mm-hmm. That is what I'm classifying, or what I'm choosing to call hip dominant.
Yeah.
But, and I wrote about this in my knee program, and I learned that from Daniel, that sort of just terminology. And however, and jump in at any time if I
you go.
But I know where you're coming from in the sense of it actually being knee dominant. And the reason being is because the thing that is initiating that weight to load back into the hip is the knee opening prematurely.
Extending, right? Yeah.
Extending.
Yeah.
Prematurely and sitting that weight back into. And so from a biomechanics man, David, which you are, if that is the crux of the problem, then that also makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just bad move. Like, not bad. I don't like use the word bad. It's just not great movement.
Yeah.
Full stop, rather than being hip or knee, because that person doesn't use the hips much either. They just use their lower back.
True. I think I can get down with that. Mm-hmm. You know.
Look, it's pedantic. Like it's just words. Like, you know, it's just words. But I just do have not a problem. It doesn't matter, and I actually don't think people are wrong calling that athlete a hip dominant athlete. I understand the sentiment behind it, but like the better I get at actually letting my shin drop forward, the better I actually use my hip, because I'm going to get that hip extension, not just in a squat, but like in sprinting, I'm going to get that co-contraction around the knee joint, which allows for hip extension to come first.
And to your point, one thing I've noticed too is that, you know, a guy that would mostly feel low back and hips in a squat movement, as they're getting to the top of that movement, where the hip is coming to the top, you can feel and see, I can visually see their glute showing up to the party. Mm-hmm. Right. But yeah, to your point, I think for me, what it's become is just an easy way for me to sort of get an idea of what do I need to go after here. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm also very careful to go to an athlete and say, you're hip dominant. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's like, there's this whole psychological piece.
It just doesn't matter.
You've been labeled. It doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. But in my mind, I know, I'm like, okay, here's how his movement's showing up. This knee is flying into extension too early. The weight's shifting back into the hips. And then he's having to do whatever it takes, whatever low back exercise you want to call it to get the weight up.
Yeah.
But and here's the other thing too, is like I think, let's just use this last 3 or 4 minutes of conversation as something for me to rant about. We're essentially saying the same two things.
Mm-hmm,
the way that you view it and understand it makes more sense to you because of your experience, but essentially we're trying to accomplish the two same things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can take you giving me that information and say, yeah, that makes sense. Right? Like,
that's not what you should do. You should fucking abuse me.
That makes sense. Like, I don't need to be fucking right, dude, you know? And one of the things that sort of I feel like holds this industry back, and on a maybe on a bigger level, people, but we won't get, this is a strength and conditioning podcast. I don't want to go too off the track, but you know, a mantra that I've developed over the years is I don't want to be right. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. I don't care if the way I say, you know, like, it's, for me, it feels like semantics. I want to be open to another person's viewpoint, be willing to challenge my own. And if I'm thinking about something incorrectly, I can be honest with myself, I move off of it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, for example, you introducing the co-contraction work to me, I could have been stubborn. I could have rejected it, like all those people in the peer-reviewed evidence-based research paper, and said, what is this dumb shit, right? But being willing to take on new information and being honest with myself, it's like, okay, well, what I've been doing isn't working, right? Maybe, just maybe. And then what that means is that you have to get outside of your comfort zone, which we talked about earlier, right? And be willing to do something new, and be willing to fail, and be willing to potentially look stupid in my Lifetime Fitness gym floor doing a foam roller bridge for the first time. Because trust me, I had plenty of people come up to me and ask me, what are you doing? Right? But I wanted to use this as an opportunity where, you know, just because my terminology or the way I'm looking at it is different from David's. I love David. We're going to be boys, right? It doesn't have to be a knockdown, drag out fight on Instagram or where people get petty in the comment section. Yeah.
It's just movement, though. You know, it's just, or whatever. It doesn't. That's why I've encouraged you and other people, and have to encourage myself to post something on Instagram, and I reserve the right to be wrong about whatever I say. You know?
Yeah.
I absolutely do. But like, it does help you get more clarity and have conversations with people. That's all. That's why half of the reason I'm doing this podcast, just have chat. And that's why I was going to ask you, do you think Daniel will come on Jump Science?
Oh,
because I'd probably have a nice row with him on a podcast.
Oh, are you kidding me? Dude, you know, I love Daniel. Daniel's my guy.
I know.
But he's the most logical. Like, Daniel, he's like a training Terminator, dude. Like, he has just, and again, like, there are some things where he and I disagree on, or the way that we're viewing it, or the way that we're saying it is different. But I can tell when as he's explaining it, like, oh, he didn't arrive at this conclusion or this way of classifying things by fucking chance. He didn't pull these things out of thin air. Yeah. These are things that he has learned through experience. And while some of the ways we explain it, or some of the ways that we arrive to solutions may be different, that doesn't mean they don't work, or that doesn't mean that, you know, they're not highly effective or worth filing away, you know? But I think you two would make for great content. I do. I think it would be awesome.
I think he's brilliant. I honestly think he's absolutely brilliant. When he says something, like, I don't think I disagree with anything he says, in fact. The same doesn't go the other way around, but I'm sure. But like, I'm cool with that, but I would have a conversation with him. I would be prepared to, like, him kind of tear me apart in some ways with his logic and stuff. And yeah, I'm cool with that, but it's still like, because I don't have explanations for why all the stuff that I think I do works. Maybe it all doesn't work, but
sure.
I don't have these great
Time
explanations.
out. Can we just go back to what you just said? Because what you just said is a very powerful and potent lesson that I've learned. Is you just said, I don't have explanations for everything that I do, but what you do know is that these things make a difference and they drive change, and that change is positive and affects the people that you're working with in a very profound way. Right? Is that fair?
I think so.
So, and I think I heard, I forget his name. So forgive me when we finally arrive at who you are. He used to work with the knees over toes guys.
Jeff, flexible.
Yes, Jeff, I apologize, man. I love your stuff. Jeff alluded to this and one of y'all's prior conversations where the first evidence is anecdotal. It is, I can know something works and is effective. Going back to your 200 friends on the peer reviewed paper, right? It is perfectly acceptable if someone asks you, how does this work? Exactly how does this work? To say, I don't know. I don't know, man. I have a theory. I have an idea. I can't quite prove it, but here are some results that show that I could be on the right track, right? Yeah. That's perfectly acceptable. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just think that if, because I feel like what happens is that people don't have the answer. And so they start pulling shit out of their ass and they start trying to justify what they're doing as opposed to just tell the truth, man. It's okay if you don't have a textbook answer to something.
Yeah. That's where someone like Daniel would crucify you. You start pulling shit out of your ass.
He starts applying the pressure. Now, here's the thing. I think that Dan, I hope I don't want to give him a bad rap here because I think he comes across as real intense, right? And his posts, he can be very black and white. But when you get him, just like you and I are right now, it's not the case. Like when someone sees me for the first time, I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. I can come across as intimidating. I'm a fucking teddy bear, dude. Like if we weren't doing this podcast right now, we would be laughing and cutting up the entire time. Nothing would be serious. Our real conversations could not be recorded and put on the internet. No. And Dan in that way is the same. So I think, I don't think it would be a tear you apart thing. I think that you two would have a productive convo. I'm going to get him on.
Yeah,
it's done.
I would like to chat with him. Definitely. I think he's good. I think he's brilliant actually. Remember I told you that maybe I'll save it for his podcast if he comes on. But what did I say? Oh, I put up a post about this separate to the first time he messaged me.
I talked to him about this.
The transfer of training one. Yes, I put up a post about that, shitting on transfer of training. And I was just saying that there is a negative transfer as well with it involved, and everything you do has in life has positive and negative repercussions. And one part of the post was I said, like, if you go out for a few beers, you're going to wake up a bit sick the next day. And he said, I don't know, he said like great post or something like that, but I wouldn't be sick. I wouldn't be sick the next morning after a few beers. And I just wrote, how many? This is in the comments. And he goes, at least 12. So I said, I'm coming to Texas.
Okay. I talked to him about something totally different. Right. This is way better. That's way better.
At least 12. So yeah.
Dan, and seriously, would love Austin, Texas. Would love to have you.
Yeah, man. I've been listening. So Elon Musk is in Texas now, is he?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So Austin
Lex Friedman's in Texas. John Danaher's after moving to Texas. The whole world is moving to Texas.
My daughter trains at his jiu-jitsu facility.
No way.
Cool. I swear to God.
I didn't know him until Kier. I think Kier mentioned him, and then Chris Leddy, who is our coach as well. was on about him before, and I've just heard about him everywhere recently, and now
Nice
I'm
guy,
like, what a
super
guy.
humble. It's one of the, he comes out and says, hey, he goes, hey, but he's just a weapon and brilliant.
Mhm.
And my client, the guy who's 6'8", John, he works with him as well. So
Cool.
Austin's the place to be, man. It's the place to be.
It looks
You got to get here.
Yeah, man. I'm going to do a tour next year, or maybe I'll just come to Austin for a while.
Just come to Austin. Skip all the other nonsense.
Yeah, man. What? Right. Where do people go to find you?
Sure. Right now, the easiest place to find me, where I'm putting out the most information and content, is Instagram. That's at Tim Riley Training. I also have a YouTube page, which has some stuff on it, not a ton, but you can subscribe there as well. It's also Tim Riley Training. Mm-hmm. And then if you're ever in Austin, Texas, I train at the Kollective, and you can DM me and show up, and I'll be happy to take you through a squat and do some co-contractions and all the stuff.
Highly recommend it. You had tag me in some NFL guy cramping for foam roller bridge, will you?
Oh, I'm gonna make it a priority now. Yeah. Are you kidding?
Or no, I'm the lacrosse guy, so I can say I trained a lacrosse person.
Oh, my lacrosse guy hates it the most. He hates it. Hates it. Yep.
Hey, you're. Oh, my microphone just went.
No, I hear you.
There we go. We're done anyway. We're out of here.
Okay. Awesome, man.